Hello everyone, if it's your first time here, welcome. And if you're coming back to my channel, thank you for the support. Since my seasonal employment contract ended recently and I'm officially unemployed, I thought it would be a good time to do a DVD and Blu-ray collection video. Because while there was a research essay for school I could be writing right now instead, I thought it would be more fun to do this and I wanted to get it out of the way. I also wasn't keen on showing my face, so I initially bought this edgy boy playing Dr. Mask. I was kind of worried that it would mess up my voice and make it hard to understand. Even though I'm not going to use it for the video, I still think it's pretty cool, and I got pet rats, so could do like a whole themed costume out of it. Now, in the spirit of unemployment, I will also be day drinking, and I will be drinking, I think it's Off the Rail Brewing Company Big Chunk Peanut Butter Brownie Porter. I went in there just to buy like a PBR, but I saw that and I was like, Like, I don't drink alcohol very often, but I do like to try like stupid gimmick stuff or seasonal stuff, so I just poured it into a separate mug because the top of the can looked kind of gross. It had like dust particles on it, so. It's not bad, I don't dislike it, but it's like the beer taste that kind of overwhelms it at first, and like the aftertaste you can really taste like the peanut butter flavor. It's kind of odd, but I don't mind it. Okay, so I don't really have it organized in a particular way. I'm not really one of those people. Like, I don't have a massive library of stuff like wall to wall, so if I'm looking for a particular thing, it's all here, so pretty easy to find, so I don't need to place anything in a particular way. Oh gosh. It's one downside of drinking in the video. As if I don't have enough speech problems. Anyway, I'll be starting from left to right. I got some digibooks or media books or whatever, Steelbooks, and then like kind of the boutique labels just kind of behind my head here. Right, so I'm gonna stop babbling and get on to what y'all came here for. First thing up, it is a Stanley Kubrick collection Blu-ray. It doesn't have every single one of his feature films. I think Paths of Glory definitely and The Killing are missing, but it's everything from Spartacus to Eyes Wide Shut, which is pretty cool. The films in this set come in this kind of book slipcover type thing that looks very nice, but it's a pain in the ass to get the discs out of. I almost said dicks. Get the dick. It also comes with a little booklet that has some blurbs and stills. Like I said, this is kind of an old Christmas present, so I imagine it's probably outdated at this point, but it's still a really nice set. It's kind of a basic bitch film bro thing to say, but Kubrick is genuinely one of my favorite directors, so it's nice to have like 90% of his filmography just in one box set. This one is a DVD set and it's definitely outdated, but it's the Godzilla collection. Has looks like 7 of the Showa era films, so not all of them. I don't know when I'll get to it, but I do have the Criterion collection Showa Godzilla set. So yeah, all of this is outdated, but I still hang on to it because before it kind of got revitalized with like the 2014 movie and stuff, this was the only way to like see the original uncut films in Japanese, and they also include, I think a lot of these include the English dubs as well, because it has both the original 1954 Godzilla and the Americanized King of the Monsters version. And I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but there's some pretty great audio commentaries from like literal Godzilla scholars on here too. Now, so this is another outdated one that I keep because it just looks cool. It's the Criterion Collection Godzilla DVD. The reason that it's a DVD and not the Blu-ray version is that it's also kind of old, and I bought this back when I was living in bumfuck nowhere, I'll say, and I was a minor and didn't have my own credit card yet, so I was kind of limited to what I could buy at the local HMB or Best Buy or other brick and mortar stores. So another DVD collection. It is the Harry Potter 8-film collection. I find myself revisiting the books more than the movies these days, but Harry Potter is just one of those nostalgic comfort food franchises for me, so it's nice to have them. This one is the Mad Max Anthology on Blu-ray, all 4 films. I have not actually got around to seeing Beyond Thunderdome yet, but I love the other 3 movies, so I really should get around to it. This set might be outdated too, I don't know, I haven't really checked, but it is the Lord of the Rings Extended Edition Blu-ray set. Like Harry Potter, this is another one of those comfort food franchises I always come back to, and this thing just looks great on the shelf. Love it. We have the Nightmare on Elm Street Blu-ray collection. Includes every film except for the 2010 remake, so no big loss there. But actually, with all of the slasher franchises getting reimaginings recently, like Scream, Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there's even an I Know What You Did Last Summer series on Prime right now, I think. I would be really interested in seeing like a modern reimagining of Nightmare on Elm Street, because I could see them doing a Nightmare on Elm Street reboot kind of in the style of the recent It movies, and I can see that going over pretty well. But yeah, it's just one of those franchises that even though only 2 or 3 of the movies are strictly speaking good, I still find something to enjoy about all of them. Now we're getting into the real cult stuff now. This is Sex, Murder, Art, the films of Jorg Garrett on Blu-ray. This was put out by Cult Epics, I think. Yep, and it contains Necromantic 1 and 2, Schramm, and Der Todsking. I'd probably say either Schramm or Der Todsking is my favorite, but I really liked Necromantic 2 as well. The original Necromantic is probably the most notorious, and while I do like it, it does kind of feel like one of those movies that's just kind of being gross for grossness's sake, which I don't mind either, but the other 3 films in this set are a little more focused. They all kind of have that element of schlock to them too, which makes them pretty fun. If you're interested in cult or underground horror, I would definitely recommend giving any of these films a watch. Next thing, it is Clint Eastwood Man with No Name trilogy. I still haven't got around to watching any of these. I find westerns are kind of hit and miss for me, but the Italian ones are generally a little more fun, so it's definitely something that's on the watch list. And this is the Godfather trilogy on Blu-ray. I love the first 2 movies, especially the second one. I actually like the Mad Max thing. I haven't gone around to watching the third one yet. This one is M. Night Shyamalan's Israel 177 trilogy. It includes Unbreakable, Split, Glass, and this really annoying-ass Walmart sticker I haven't managed to peel off yet. I'll have to go at it with a hairdryer or something. Unbreakable is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I'm glad it's finally been getting the recognition it deserves, because it's a really unique and character-driven superhero film way ahead of its time. I enjoyed Split as well, and I have not seen Glass since it originally came out. I do remember not disliking it as much as others have. So here is the Rob Zombie trilogy, or the Firefly trilogy, whatever you want to call it. It includes House of a Thousand Corpses, The Devil's Rejects, and 3 from Hell. I thought 3 from Hell was forgettable as anything, and to be fair, there were a lot of production issues involving Sid Haig's declining health and unfortunate passing, which really, I imagine, complicated things behind the scenes. But House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects are still great. It's nice to have them all in one thing. I think this is the last trilogy for right now. It is Park Chan-wook's Vengeance trilogy. It includes Oldboy, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, and Lady Vengeance. I love Oldboy. Haven't got around to watching the other 2 yet, but I'm excited to check them out, especially Lady Vengeance from what I've heard. It's an Arrow release I was really excited for. It is Ridley Scott's Legend. I already covered this a little bit in my Boxing Day video, but it comes with the Blu-ray itself, this little book, and like some art cards and a poster, I think, with the same art as seen here, and also the original theatrical poster art, I think, on the reverse side. But yeah, this is one of those movies that was on TV quite a bit when I was a kid, from what I remember, that kind of scared the shit out of me when I was like 6 years old, but eventually I grew to love it. It's one of my favorite Tim Curry roles, and it's got baby Tom Cruise before he went full Xenu, so how could you pass that up? Okay, here's another one I was really excited for. It is Second Sight's Lake Mungo set. It's kind of like the Legend one. It comes with the Blu-ray booklet, and I think it comes with some postcards as well. It's another one I'm really glad that it's finally getting the recognition it deserves. I don't want to say too much about it, because if you're interested, it's one of those movies that you should really discover and experience on your own. I think it's free to watch on Tubi TV with ads if you're interested, but don't want to go splurge on this. But I watched this movie for the first time a few years ago, and like I said, I don't want to say too much about it, but it's like one of those like mockumentary type horror movies, and it's extremely well done. It's not overtly scary. It's kind of a cliche, but it's just like extremely unsettling. It does have like one of the scariest fucking scenes in any horror movie though I think I've ever seen, so be ready for that. But yeah, as soon as Second Sight not only announced this was coming out, but also that it would be region-free, because I still don't have a region-free player, I was just like, that TikTok meme when they're just slamming the credit card on the table, like, very grateful to Second Sight for giving this film the attention it deserves. One of my digibooks or media books or whatever you want to call it for Jaws. This is also one of the ones that's pretty old, so you can tell how old it is because like a friggin' Discovery Channel Shark Week flyer just fell out. Very mid to late 2000s vibes. So yeah, it just comes with the Blu-ray and the DVD disc. And the booklet part on the inside comes with some blurbs and interviews and some storyboard art, which is kind of cool. Some behind the scenes stuff. This is another one, like the Lake Mungo one, where as soon as it was announced, I was just like slamming that credit card on the table. It is Little Shop of Horrors, the director's cut, with the original ending that if you've seen the stage musical, you'll be familiar with. It was originally intended to be included in this film as well, and they even filmed like this whole elaborate musical sequence with all these animatronic and stop motion animated killer plants. But unfortunately, it did not go over well with the test audiences and was cut and replaced with a happier ending. I watched this movie first when I was like 10 years old and I loved it. I'd never really seen anything like it before. Like, it was a musical, there was catchy songs in it, but it's also kind of a dark story, you know? It's this dude chopping people up to feed to a killer plant, but it sings. And then I became one of those theater kids and fell in love with the stage version of the musical and discovered that the original ending was quite different. And not only that, Don't Feed the Plants was an absolute banger, and I was disappointed that it didn't get to be included in the film, but now the original version is finally restored. And this is also a little book format. It's got just the one Blu-ray disc in this one, and I really like the kind of simplistic artwork on there. And it includes a bunch of stills and little biographies on some of the actors in it, and some blurbs about the film itself. So this is a book as well, but it's kind of weird because I should say the movie itself is Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver, one of my favorites. I really love this gritty 1970s era and style of filmmaking. And we're into the Steelbooks. First one up is the original Mothra, and it has this clear-ish plastic slipcover on it. You take it off and it just has like the text and planes and stuff, and then you can get the full artwork of the original poster. As you can probably tell from this point, I'm a big fan of kaiju stuff and the Showa era stuff in particular, so this is a really gorgeous release that I'm happy to have in my collection. I guess we can skip this one when we come to the DVDs. It's Toho Collection DVD. It comes with the H-Man, Battle in Outer Space, and Mothra. So yeah, it's nice that we're finally getting some high quality releases of these old films. Jurassic Park, it's got kind of this cool comic book style art cover. I'm 99% sure this was from Best Buy, because they have a lot of exclusives and steelbooks and stuff. But Jurassic Park is what has been one of my favorite movies since I was 3, so of course I had to get this one. Next steelbook, another monster thing. It is the 2014 version of Godzilla. If I ever get around to getting a 4K player, I'd really like to buy the 4K version of this film, because unfortunately for some reason the Blu-ray transfer compared to the theatrical version is extremely dark, so you miss a lot of the stuff, especially because a lot of the action scenes and stuff take place at night. And I feel bad for people who didn't see it in the theater and watched it for the first time on the Blu-ray and home video version, because it's really not the optimal way to see the movie. Now, I've heard the 4K version does correct a lot of that, so that's definitely a reason why I'd look into getting a 4K player in the future. The next one, I think this is another Best Buy steelbook. It is Star Wars The Force Awakens, but I really love this steelbook too. There's Kylo Ren on the front and Phasma on the back, and while they both look pretty cool, I just think the contrast with like the black and the red on the steelbook cover is very neat. Again, would not be surprised if this was Best Buy. It is The Witch, a Robert Eggers film. I really love this steelbook design as well. It's got the, I really love like the kind of muted like bluish and grayish colors, and on the back you have just kind of this gray like kind of etching style thing of Black Phillip. Looks very cool. Definitely one of my favorite horror films of the 2010s, and I'm glad that Eggers is continuing to direct some pretty great stuff. Okay, last of the steelbooks for now, it is Tigers Are Not Afraid. Another great looking steelbook. It's got the little tiger drawing on the back. Shudder is really great for this, and I wish other streaming services would release their exclusives on physical media. And like I said, it's really great that Shudder has been pretty consistent with their physical media releases of their stuff. Anyway, this is another one of my all-time favorite films, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 40th Anniversary Edition from Dark Sky Films. I love the packaging for this release because like you see it here and it's got like Leatherface and like all the skulls behind him, but you take it out and you got like the empty passageway here, but then you flip this around and you can kind of recreate that iconic first kill scene where the steel door just slams shut, and I think that's really awesome. I also have, I think this is the last Steelbook, but it's a DVD Steelbook, also put out by Dark Sky, I think, that I've had since I was like 12 or 13 of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and obviously the collector's edition Blu-ray is of higher quality, but this is another one of the outdated releases I still hang on to because it looks awesome. Like, I love Steelbooks, and it has a very high sentimental nostalgic value to me as well. Releases coming up. First one is another one of my all-time favorites, The Thing, John Carpenter, and like a lot of the Scream Factory releases, it's got this new cover art illustration that I think looks really cool, but also you can reverse it and get, I'm gonna try to show this without fucking it up, the original classic poster art, and it also includes a lot of bonus features and behind the scenes documentaries and stuff, so you can't go wrong with next Scream Factory release. It's some pretty high quality cheese. It is Silver Bullet, starring Gary Busey and Corey Haim. But it's still a really fun monster movie with some good performances and human drama in it as well that you wouldn't really expect. It also has a wheelchair chase scene, which is really great. So, final Scream Factory disc that I know of. It is The Exorcist 3. This includes both the theatrical cut, and they call it the director's cut, but it's very unfinished. It's more of like a work print, but it's still really interesting to see, especially since, even though I think the theatrical version is still great, there was a lot of executive meddling behind the scenes that really altered what the original vision for this film was supposed to be. I think a lot of people overlook this movie since it's a sequel in a franchise, which, to be fair, the track record for those in this genre isn't great, and there's some extremely well executed tension and scares in here, as well as some great performances by George C. Scott and Brad Dourif. And I think it combines like a detective serial killer storyline with the demonic possession storyline in a really interesting way. With this shelf here, I kind of organize things by like general release year, so the first one up is a silent film, The Passion of Joan of Arc. I haven't watched this since I was in film school, but I remember it having a pretty profound effect on me, and it includes a few different options for the musical score. Like, the music and the sound design is half the movie, and it's especially apparent with silent films, so it's interesting to see what different types of compositions, what the effect could have on the viewing experience. I kind of forgot about the beer for a while, so it's been sitting here for a little bit. The peanut butter flavor is definitely more apparent as it's been sitting out. Criterion Blu-ray, not a silent film, but a very early talkie. It's Fritz Lang's M. If you're interested in film history, you'll definitely recognize the name Fritz Lang from his extremely influential silent film Metropolis, which is also in the collection, and had a pretty big impact on me when I first saw it. But this one even more so, because it's like, this does not feel like it was made in the 1930s. Like, it's very layered, morally gray story about a serial killer, and not only that, a serial killer of children. And Peter Lorre's performance in this is definitely one of the all-time greats when it comes to portrayals of serial killers or disturbed individuals in general on film. So yeah, this is one of my favorites, would highly recommend it. Right, this is the Criterion Blu-ray edition of Eyes Without a Face. This one's a lot more recent than the other two. It's 1960, but it's still one of those movies that feels very ahead of its time. You sometimes see it on those disturbing movie lists and stuff, and it might be kind of blasé to modern audiences, but some of the imagery in here is pretty fucked up for something that came out in the 1960s. But it's also a very beautiful film as well, and that's one of the reasons why it continues to stick with me. Right, here's another Criterion. It is Midnight Cowboy. This is another one I watched in film school, and I remember really enjoying it. I haven't rewatched it recently, but it's on the list, definitely, like everything else. I just really love the dynamic between the two main characters, who are portrayed by Dustin Hoffman and Jon Voight. Here's another Dirt Fest. It is Sallow, or the 120 Days of Sodom. I actually did a analysis of this film on my channel. Feel free to check it out if you're interested. I remember I first got into like extreme horror and like the whole disturbing film subgenre when I was like 15, 16, going through this rebellious phase and trying to find and watch all the fucked up movies I could, and this was one of them, and I was kind of underwhelmed by it when I first saw it at 16, and I rewatched it again a few years ago, and It had grown on me a little more, but I still wasn't in love with it. But in recent years, and especially after exploring more of Pier Paolo Pasolini's filmography and kind of the historical and social context behind this film, I've really grown to appreciate it on a much deeper level. It's gonna sound pretentious, but this is definitely not one of those films most people could just sit down, watch without context, and get much out of, I think. It really benefits from knowing more of the background. But if you do put in that work, at least in my opinion, I found it to be a rewarding experience by the end. Okay, this is another one I watched for the first time in film school. It's Terry Gilliam's Brazil. Amazing movie, very, very influential, socially conscious sci-fi film, which contrary to what some ideologues will tell you is more the norm than the exception. I mean, just look at Metropolis. But yeah, this is another one of my favorites that I have not revisited in a while, so that's definitely something I'd like to get around to, especially when I have the physical copy right here. Here's a pretty recent Criterion release. It is Parasite. I really love the box art here. I think this is actually the word parasite in Morse code, which if you've seen the film is a really neat Easter egg. It's gonna sound like a fucking hipster. I actually checked this out in a theater before the Oscar nominations came out, and this is one of those movies that's just a joy to discover for the first time. There's just so many hard left turns in the story. So before I end the Criterions, I'm just gonna reach up and get the Godzilla. It's on yeah, this is a really tight space, but yeah, this is the Godzilla Showa set book. I don't really want to spend too much time on it because it's really awkward holding it in this tiny space, but yeah, it's got some great original artwork for each film inside of this gorgeous coffee table style book. I actually took the discs out and just keep them in these blank cases because they were in these like little slip things that, like the Stanley Kubrick box set, are an absolute pain in the ass to retrieve or place the discs back in. Okay, so that is the end of the Criterions. Moving on to, I already covered the Legend arrow thing, but here are my other arrows. This is Deep Red, probably my favorite Argento film out of the ones I've seen. And it almost plays kind of like a romantic comedy with some really insane giallo kills in it, which I really enjoy. Okay, so I'm just gonna end the video here and maybe come back to it tomorrow because my battery's running dead and I'm worried about losing the daylight, so. Okay, we're back. I think the last one I talked about yesterday was Deep Red, so I'm gonna move on ahead to Last House on the Left. I'm also gonna try to blab a bit less about the movies, cause, yeah, anyway. Last House on the Left, Arrow, original Wes Craven version. Not one of my favorite movies of his, but still pretty historically important to the genre. Another Arrow release, Cold Light of Day. I bought this secondhand and I still haven't seen it yet, so it's another one to add to the to-watch pile. Another Arrow release, another one of my favorite movies. This is Takashi Miike's Audition. Excellent modern-day thriller. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it already, and don't read anything about it before you do. Yeah, this is the last Arrow release, I think. It's a double pack of Offspring and The Woman. This was initially a blind buy, but I have seen both movies since then, and while Offspring was like pretty entertaining for what it is, just like a low budget cannibal movie, The Woman is on another level. Absolutely love that film, but it was from the same director as May, so not really surprised by that. But a couple of Grindhouse releasing up next. This is a big one. It is Cannibal Holocaust 3-disc edition. YouTube might get mad at me for showing the cover, but whatever. Again, Cannibal Holocaust is a landmark film in extreme horror, and if you're interested in getting into the subgenre, I'd consider this mandatory viewing. A lot of people are put off by the animal cruelty, but thankfully, being the most infamous film and having a few high-quality releases, this actually includes a cut with all the animal cruelty removed. So it's definitely something to look into if you're curious about it but don't want to see the animal cruelty, and honestly, I don't really blame you. It also includes a CD soundtrack. It has a very interesting, unconventional soundtrack that I could talk more about, but I kind of want to do a separate video on Cannibal Holocaust in the future, so I'm going to move on. This is another Grindhouse releasing. It's The Beyond, probably my favorite, or at least one of my favorite Lucio Fulci movies. You can't see it now because it's daylight, but this cover is actually glow in the dark. If you look it up, you can see photos of it in action. Yeah, this is another 10 out of 10 release from Grindhouse. Not only does it have the cool glow in the dark slipcover, it also comes with a CD soundtrack just like Cannibal Holocaust. If you've seen a more recent movie called The Void, it's basically a low-key remake of this movie, so if you like that movie, definitely check this one out. Okay, this is the only Blue Underground release I have, and it was secondhand. It's Lucio Fulci's Zombie. This is an iconic movie, but I actually haven't seen it in a while, so that's another one on my rewatch list. I'm assuming this is another one that might be outdated because there are so many different editions out of this that it's kind of hard to keep them in check, but oh well. Okay, got a couple unearthed films up here. The first one is The Untold Story, starring Anthony Wong and directed by Herman Yao. They also worked on 2 other films called Taxi Hunter and Ebola Syndrome, and they're both pretty high up on my to-watch list because they both sound absolutely batshit, and this movie is too, or at least like the last third of it is fucking insane. I think this is the only thing I've probably seen Anthony Wong in, but he's just so great at playing this like absolute scumbag. Love it. It's also based on a Chinese true crime case, but is very factually inaccurate, so just saying. Okay, this next one, nice and controversial. It's a Serbian film from Unearthed Films. What can I really say about this one? It's definitely a challenging film, I'll put it that way. I think it's actually competently made for what it is, and I bought the Blu-ray edition because I'd like to cover some more like controversial films after my solo video, and it's nice to have physical copies where you have access to not only the uncut version of the film, which there are a few different cuts of this out there, but commentaries and behind the scenes stuff and other special features that would be good for research. So interested in seeing the uncut version just to see like what the difference is, because I know that the one I watched wasn't uncut, but honestly I'm not in a hurry to throw it on again, and if you know anything about the film, you probably know why. Okay, so these were all kind of the labels, and now we're moving on to just... I may as well do these together, because the new version of Stephen King's It, Part 1 and 2. For all the flaws these movies have, I thought they nailed the characters extremely well, and the cast that they chose for both the child and the adult versions of the Losers Club were just absolutely perfect. And I've heard a lot of dislike for Part 2 online, but I personally loved it, like maybe even more than the first part. Alright, moving on. This is another certified basic bitch film bro classic. It's Nicholas Winding Refn's Drive. It's a simple story, but it's executed very well and extremely stylishly. Absolutely legendary soundtrack and violent as hell. It's Lars von Trier's Melancholia. I haven't seen this in a very long time, but I do remember liking it quite a bit. So this is another one that I'd really like to rewatch at some point. Alright, and this is Cloud Atlas, a very, I want to say messy film, but it still had like a really unique and cool premise in my opinion, and it had a huge emotional effect on me when I watched it. So yeah, definitely a big fan of this one. Okay, another film bro classic, it's Joker from 2019. I love Joaquin Phoenix. I'll watch him in literally anything, and he's great in this movie. It's maybe not that different from your average like gritty character drama, but it is an interesting take on the Joker character in this format. Another Robert Eggers banger, it's The Lighthouse. Even though there's some unsettling moments, I honestly kind of view this as more of a dark comedy than anything. And again, Willem Dafoe is one of those actors I'll watch in literally anything, and he was incredible as this like gross old lighthouse keeper character. So yeah, definitely recommended if you haven't seen. And this is The Conjuring, just the first one. It has kind of a cool... I actually prefer the second film over this one, but I haven't actually went out and bought it on Blu-ray yet. It's been on my wish list for a really long time, but I still like coming back to this one. There's another one. This is Phantasm, the original. Not a perfect film by any means, but it has a killer soundtrack. Angus Scrimm, great horror villain, bad guy performance. And it had this pretty groundbreaking style at the time, which was interesting to watch considering it influenced a lot of other films that I love. Okay, and this is just the first Avengers movie, not much really to say about it. I don't know if I'd consider this one of my favorite Marvel films at this point, but there's some entertaining character interactions in it, and I could see it as something I'd throw on every once in a while. Now this is Godzilla, King of the Monsters from 2019. This is honestly my favorite MonsterVerse film. The storyline and the human dialogue is an absolute dumpster fire, but I think that kind of adds to the charm of it. And as a fan of the series, it was so incredible seeing these like big budget Hollywood versions of King Ghidorah, Mothra, Rodan, all in the same movie and treated with a lot of care. Denis Villeneuve, Blade Runner 2049. I actually prefer this over the original. Probably one of the greatest sequels of all time, if I'm being honest. It's another James Wan joint. This is Malignant. I already talked about this a bit in my Boxing Day and my Best of 2021 video, so I won't talk too much about it here, but it is an absolutely bonkers slasher throwback film that is again probably best seen without really knowing much at all about it. Okay, and this is The Green Knight. Again, I already talked about this in my Boxing Day and Best of 2021 videos, so I won't really talk too much about it here. Love this movie. Okay, this is an old one. This is Das Boot. classic horror film. Especially highly recommended if you are claustrophobic and you hate yourself, because like 90%, I haven't seen it in a while, but like 90% of the movie just takes place in this little submarine, and everything that could go wrong goes wrong, and it's very tense and anxiety inducing, and the ending is just an absolute gut punch. So it's definitely mandatory viewing. Great movie. Right, this is The Orphanage. This is a Spanish horror film. Probably one of my favorites of the decade it came out. It's super scary, but has a very emotionally affecting and satisfying conclusion. Face a little fucked up here, but this is What We Do in the Shadows. One of my favorite comedies ever. First time I saw it, there were a few times I laughed so hard I almost cried. I have not seen the TV series yet because I don't have a subscription to whatever service it's on, but I'm definitely going to check that out in the future because I've heard good things about it. Right, and this is Bong Joon-ho's Snowpiercer. Another great one. The thing I really love about a lot of Bong Joon-ho's films that I've seen is they're very tonally inconsistent at times, but in a way that doesn't negatively affect the movie. And I don't know, I just really love when films just embrace their weirdness like that. And this is Halloween, another one of my all-time favorite films, the original John Carpenter version. This Blu-ray is very outdated, and the new, I think it was Scream Factory releases of the entire series are definitely something that's high up on my wish list, but the film's great no matter what format you watch it on. Alright, and this is The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Long title, long movie, but it's so beautifully made, and the performances, and the music, it's just an incredible long-form character drama. Highly recommend this. I don't think nearly enough people have seen it. Right, and this is Pan's Labyrinth, another outdated Blu-ray. I'd really love to upgrade to the Criterion Collection version at some point, but this will do in the meantime. There's not much I can really say about it that hasn't already been said. It's a great, dark, adult fairy tale film with an amazing visual style and creature effects. I don't want to show it now because I'll mess up like my framing here, but I have a art print hanging up above my shelf that is signed by Doug Jones, who is the performer that portrayed both the Pale Man and the Fawn in this movie. It was from a time I met him at a convention, and he's just one of the sweetest people I've ever met at one of those things, so that's a very fond memory. Like, Doug Jones is one of those performers that is just in so much shit that even if you have no idea who he is, you don't recognize his name, chances are you've probably seen him in something. Okay, this is another classic basic Blu-ray that really needs updated. It is the original Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Again, not much I can really say about this that hasn't been said already, but classic film, throw it on every Halloween. And this is the other Bong Joon-ho movie I was talking about, The Host. It's also probably my favorite out of his feature films that I've seen. Like, I love Parasite and Snowpiercer too, but come on, this monster movie, how could I not love it? And this especially is one of those movies that there's a lot of clashing in like the tone and the genre, but in a way that actually works, because it's a monster movie, but it's also a family drama, but there's also comedic relief, but it also has like some real tearjerker moments, including the ending, so it's just a very unique and wonderful film. Okay, so this is Tremors, yet another basic Blu-ray that I'd really like to update in the future, especially now that Arrow has, from what I've heard, a pretty great release of this film out. And this is Hereditary, another one of my favorite horror films the decade it came out. Not much I can say about this that hasn't already been said, but yeah, it's incredible. I literally almost had a panic attack the first time I saw this in the theater, but that just made me want to go back and see it again as soon as possible, so. This is The Babadook, which I think is how it's supposed to be pronounced. I saw the new Scream movie recently and it was pretty good, except the characters keep pronouncing it Babadook. I always thought it was supposed to be like Babadook, like a book, because he comes from a book. Whatever you want to call it, it's a great film. Okay, and this is one of my favorite animated films. It's Don Bluth's The Secret of Nim. It's one of those older kids movies that is still child friendly, but it's also not afraid to get dark and have some pretty high stakes. And it was also on TV quite a bit when I was a kid, so that's how I got exposed to it. Very nostalgic, and I still love it to this day. What do we have here but another basic Blu-ray that I really need to update, the Criterion edition. It's Silence of the Lambs. Another classic film I think almost everyone has seen, so there's not really much I can say about it, but yeah. Alright, and this is David Fincher's Zodiac, probably one of my favorite true crime serial killer films of all time. I'm not sure which edition this is, but like I really like the cover. It's like letter too, and even like the back cover is like that. But yeah, it does focus on like more the media side and investigation into the Zodiac killer case, but it also has really brutal and extremely tense scenes in it that make up a very small part of the overall film but leave a massive impact on anyone who's seen it. Okay, this is a great one here. This is Frank Darabont's The Mist. This is a somewhat hard to find Blu-ray that not only contains the original version of the film, but also a black and white version, which was, from what I remember, that was the filmmaker's original intent before the studio made them release it in color. But I watched the black and white version for the first time on Halloween last year, and even as someone who's been watching this film somewhat regularly since I was like 12 years old, the black and white version just hits different. It's hard to explain, but the black and white really adds to like the aesthetic of like this white misty void just like rolling over everything, and you see like figures and like the creatures like kind of emerging from the mist. It just adds so much to the experience of the film. Like I said, this particular Blu-ray is somewhat hard to find, and it's pretty expensive if you do find it. I think I paid like around $80 Canadian for this from eBay, which I think is probably like 10K in US dollars, but anyway. It's not the most accessible thing out there, but if you had the opportunity to see the black and white version, I would highly, highly recommend it. Right, and this is another Lucio Fulci film, The Psychic. Not one of my favorites, but I do still enjoy it. It's a little dry and talky compared to most of his movies, but I still think the storyline is really interesting and it has a great last act. Also, even if you've never heard of this movie before, you probably heard the main musical theme that is also used during the hospital scene in Kill Bill Volume 1. Right, and this is another, it is a Serbian film, but not a Serbian film. It is Life and Death of a Porno Gang. From what I remember, this and the Serbian film were released fairly close together, and they have a lot of the same subject matter, like pornography and snuff, and the problems faced by people in the country. But this plays it more as like, way more as like a dark comedy for the most part. And I actually prefer it over the other one because it's just more generally entertaining. Okay, and this is another disturbing film that I absolutely love. It is In a Glass Cage. A film about Nazis and a film about child abuse would each be fairly disturbing on their own, but this one not only combines them, but the cinematography and the set design and the tension and the creepy as shit main performance tie it all together into this really disturbing but overall really satisfying experience. This one, Disney's Fantasia and Fantasia 2000. Probably one of Disney's most ambitious classic animated films. Fantasia 2000 has some decent sequences too, but it just really can't compare, unfortunately, to the original. Okay, and this is double pack of The Dark Crystal and Labyrinth. Some more fun, weird 80s fantasy movies. I rewatched The Dark Crystal somewhat recently because I really loved the prequel series on Netflix, which unfortunately was cancelled. Even though the puppets in it are awesome, I overall found it kind of dry, and I haven't watched Labyrinth in a while, so I'd like to revisit that one at some point as well. Okay, here's another fun, nasty film. It's John Waters' Pink Flamingos. Why this has not had a decent Blu-ray release, I don't know, but I'm happy to have a physical copy of it regardless. This is kind of a weird one in the collection, but it's BBC's Prehistoric Earth collection. It includes, let's see, Before the Dinosaurs, Walking with Dinosaurs, Allosaurus, Walking with Prehistoric Beasts, and Walking with Cavemen. Walking with Dinosaurs was my shit growing up, and I had some, I think it was like some blank VHS tapes that one of my uncles recorded the show on and gifted to me that I watched all the damn time. But I was like a huge dinosaur kid from a very young age, and I still kinda am. I've spent an embarrassing amount of money on Beasts of the Mesozoic crap. What's adulthood good for if not spending an embarrassing amount of money on premium dinosaur toys? Even though Walking with Dinosaurs is the headliner and it's the one that's most nostalgic to me, I also watched, I think it was Walking with Prehistoric Beasts a lot as a kid as well, because I still remember the Terror Bird and the Smilodon episodes. But even though none of them quite reach the level of Walking with Dinosaurs, they're all great, well put together documentaries. It seems like the dinosaur documentary genre has kind of died out recently, and that makes me sad because, you know, there are always more scientific discoveries being made, and it would be really great to see a modern, up-to-date version with all the technical and storytelling prowess of the original Walking with Dinosaurs. This is another eBay FOMO impulse purchase. It is Begotten, a very, very obscure experimental art house horror film that has recently kind of had a renaissance thanks to the internet. I can't tell you how many times I've watched one of those clickbait, like, top 5 most disturbing videos from the dark web things on YouTube, and it's like literally just like this thumbnail or like clips from this movie. I haven't watched it in a very long time, but I remember it being kind of, the aesthetic is absolutely great. Like it looks like, it genuinely feels like somebody dug the film reels that composed this movie out of like thousands of years of sediment, and it's hard to describe. It just looks ancient and cursed and creepy as all hell. And for the longest time, like the official DVD copies were like almost impossible to find, and they were also expensive as hell. Another YouTuber called Stephen Bloodworth did a video where he unboxes one of these DVDs, and he said it was very likely to be an official DVD, so I don't know if somebody just stumbled upon a box of sealed DVDs of this weird ass movie that was out of print. So anyway, if you're interested in watching this but don't want to splurge on a physical copy, I think it's extremely easy to find on YouTube and other video sharing sites. It's another recent Godzilla movie. It's Shin Godzilla. It's a really unique but also back to basics take on the monster. I love the creature design and the atomic breath effects in this. So this is Thor Ragnarok. It's probably one of my favorite Marvel films. I love almost anything Taika Waititi has done. I just really click with his comedic sensibilities, and it definitely shines through in this despite being an MCU film. It's kind of appropriate that this one came after Thor Ragnarok because it's made by a filmmaker, in this case James Gunn, who has a really particular comedic and character writing sensibility that I really love, and it still shines through even with a big studio and franchise attached. This is The Suicide Squad from 2021. Not gonna talk much more about it because I already covered it in my Best of 2021 video. I'm just gonna do these together. These are the original Star Wars trilogy. These are actually some DVDs that I purchased from the local Blockbuster when it was closing down back in the day. So you can even see it there. There's the address on there, but it's, like I said, it's long since closed down, so who gives a shit? I don't even live there anymore, so it's not like the Zodiac Killer can come to my house just based on that. I would like to buy one of the unofficial Blu-ray despecialized editions, but these also have one disc for the, I don't remember which year they released, but they're not like the most recent special edition versions of the original movies, but they have the updated version and I think the closest approximation of the original versions that are commercially available, officially anyway. This copy of The Empire Strikes Back in particular is actually signed by Billy D. Williams, who I met at a convention once. So even though these are very beat up and very outdated, they're still pretty unique and special to me personally. Okay, back to it. There's some loud ass shit going on outside my apartment, so I'm really sorry if you can hear that, but I can't control it, so whatever. Okay, next one up. My favorite of the Disney Star Wars films, and has already aged, and I believe will continue to age like fine wine. It is Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi. The discourse surrounding this movie, this Star War, for whatever stupid reason, is very politicized and incendiary, so disclaimer. It's perfectly fine to dislike or criticize this movie, just don't be a reactionary shitheel about it. That's all there is to it. Yeah, for all the flaws this has, this is like, out of all of the recent Star Wars movies, it really feels like it was made by a filmmaker with a vision. This and Rogue One are probably the most visually stunning of all the Disney Star Wars films. I would even say that this is probably the best looking from a cinematography and color standpoint of any Star Wars film. There's some incredible looking shots and sequences in this movie. I loved Mark Hamill's performance and character arc in this movie. He actually feels like a flawed human being and not an existentially horrifying, digitally created video game character mindlessly slaughtering NPCs and then piecing the fuck out. And the fans seem to love the latter, but thankfully we still got this film. It still exists, no matter how hard the parts of the fandom and Disney itself would like to retcon it. And also, as a filthy 2015 Raylo, not a force on this earth could take away the experience I had sitting in the theater watching this at the Thursday night showing and watching the Force Spawn scenes. I was like my soul left my body. Another two basic Blu-rays that I really need to upgrade is Alien and Aliens. This one comes with kind of a cool slipcover, and this one does not, unfortunately. I do prefer Alien just because I really love smaller scale, like tension-filled horror tone over the more like action-y tone of this one, but they're both great films. Honestly, I even like all the dumbass sequels and prequels to varying extents. Even though they're nowhere near as good as the first two, they're still, I feel, entertaining in their own ways. This one is The Descent, also one of my favorite horror films of the 2000s, and another great watch for the claustrophobics. It's one of those movies where they really did so much with a limited amount of resources, and the results are incredible. This one is Green Room, another intense, violent thriller. Unfortunately, I think one of Anton Yelchin's last performances, if not his last. I don't remember off the top of my head, but yeah. Outdated but still neat Blu-ray of Godzilla vs. Hedorah, or Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster. Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, and Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All-Out Attack from the Millennium Godzilla series, which is really a continuity clusterfuck, but I think is really underrated, and I really love Godzilla against Mechagodzilla in particular. This and the sequel, Tokyo SOS, were the first Japanese Godzilla movies I'd ever seen, so they're very nostalgic for me as well. And this is another groundbreaking silent film I already discussed before. This is Fritz Lang's Metropolis. Without this movie, there would be no Star Wars, no Blade Runner, none of that crap. And it's still honestly a great watch just to see like what they were able to accomplish with special effects at the time. I haven't rewatched this in a really long time, and I should, so. Right, and this is Cabin in the Woods, a really great meta commentary on the whole horror genre. This has been out for like a decade, but if you haven't seen it, I feel like it's one of those movies you should go in knowing as little about it as possible. But yeah, super funny, super clever, great monster carnage. That's all I'll say. Right, and this is Mike Flanagan's Dr. Sleep. I haven't seen this since it came out in the theaters, and I bought this for the director's cut, which I heard is a huge improvement, so I'm really excited to check that out at some point. The kind of strange and interesting thing about this movie is that it's kind of a blend of elements from the Stanley Kubrick film and the original Stephen King novel, which, if you've read it and seen the film, you'd know that they are very different in a few places, especially the ending. And I feel like this was actually a surprisingly well done happy middle ground between them. Yes, Brandon Cronenberg's Possessor from 2020. This is one of those movies that grows on me every time I rewatch it. It's a really unconventional and visually interesting take on the idea of an assassin and body swapping or taking over someone else's body. And it's explored in a very mindfucky, true to the original Cronenberg style. So, would recommend this one if you haven't seen it already. And this one is an absolutely landmark early slasher film. It is Black Christmas. Ironically, this is the same director who made A Christmas Story. But I watched this for the first time a few years ago, and I was surprised at how well it held up. Like, even though it's about like this weird dude killing a bunch of young women, I thought it was a surprisingly feminist film, and the killer himself is just creepy as all hell. There's no like big revelation. You really know nothing about this dude. He's just some crazed rando off the street, and that's what I find so off-putting about it. And this is the only Code Red Blu-ray I think I have. It's a double feature of The Gates of Hell, another Lucio Fulci film that I really love, and something called Psycho from Texas. I've never heard of Psycho from Texas. I just bought this for The Gates of Hell, or City of the Living Dead as it's also called. I've heard mixed things about Code Red, and I haven't had a chance to crack this open and watch it yet, so hopefully it's a decent release. This I Spit on Your Grave, another landmark exploitation film. Haven't watched the original in a really long time, so this is another one I need to get around to watching. This is Romeo and Juliet, early James Gunn film. He actually co-wrote the screenplay with Lloyd Kaufman. Again, I haven't watched this one in a while, but I remember it being one of my favorite trauma films, so I'm really excited to revisit this. Yeah. This is The Wicker Man, an absolute classic folk horror banger. This is another one with a really unconventional soundtrack for a horror movie that I really love. And another killer last act. Would highly recommend checking out the original if you haven't already. Again, this is another recent one. This is Denis Villeneuve's Dune. I already talked about this in my Best of 2021 video, but I love this movie. The visual direction and the sound and the music was just all incredible and made you feel really fully immersed in this world. And not only that, I feel like I should show this too because, you know, I went to my local Walmart and I copped this limited edition paint box as the label on the wrapping put it. It looks pretty cool. It's got like this nice like kind of shininess to it, but it's pretty basic. Like I don't really want to fuck around with it too much here and waste a bunch of time, but there's this other lighter box on the inside and it just has like Dune and has like the Atreides emblem on both sides, and just the basic Blu-ray was in here and the rest is just hollow, and it looks neat, but it's kind of a pain in the ass because it doesn't really fit anywhere on my shelf. Okay, I was just about to move on to the final section here, which is just DVDs, but I also remembered this one that was just kind of displayed at the top of my shelf that I forgot about. It is the Midsommar Director's Cut Blu-ray that was released by the A24 store. This is a really well put together release. You can see one of my rats took a fucking bite out of it there, but it's just really nice. It's almost like put together like a book. Hardcover book, and even like the inside is in here, and you can see Danny and like the flower slug outfit and the burning bear on the back, but the pages on the inside are all just like the various paintings you see in the foreground or in the background in the movie, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, as for the director's cut itself, I've seen both, and I don't think the director's cut is mandatory viewing if you've already seen the theatrical version, but it does include some deleted scenes. They kind of give more background on the cult and some of the characters, and also Christian comes across as a lot more of an asshole in this version. So, okay, onto the DVD shelf. Gonna be some real old bullshit in here, but this is Troll 2, one of the best So Bad It's Good movies ever. Doofy as hell, I love it. And speaking of So Bad It's Good, this is Tommy Wiseau's The Room, autographed by Tommy Wiseau himself. Unfortunately, he autographed like the outside part of the DVD and not like the actual paper slip on the inside, so this can rub off super easily, but he also signed the disc on the inside, so that's a good backup just in case. But again, I think it's one of the funniest So Bad It's Good movies ever made. A lot of the other very well-known So Bad It's Good movies like Plan 9, Troll 2, Manos, they're all like kind of really shitty genre films, but this one tries to be a straight drama, which I think makes it even funnier. It's great, it's best to see it in a crowded theater because it has almost this Rocky Horror thing going for it. Whoops. Bring plenty of plastic spoons. This is American Mary, and this is another one of those that was purchased from a video rental place that was closing down in my hometown. This is kind of a one-part rape revenge movie and one-part body horror movie. Kind of a crappy looking Night of the Living Dead DVD I bought at a thrift store once. I really need to get the Criterion Collection edition. And this is the stage musical version of Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. I was involved in a production of this quite a few years back, and it's probably my favorite theater production I've ever been a part of, so this show has a lot of sentimental value to me, and the music absolutely slaps. And the Tim Burton version is decent, but it's very Tim Burton-y. This is another one of my favorite movies that I severely need to upgrade, is Studio Ghibli's Princess Mononoke. I went through an anime phase as a preteen and eventually grew out of it, but this is always going to be something that I love coming back to. Okay, and this is Hobo with a Shotgun, a great genre throwback film. Rutger Hauer is amazing in it. It's very goofy, doesn't take itself too seriously, but it also has some good character moments in it as well. Say Criterion DVD of Kronos, I think one of Guillermo del Toro's first feature films, if not his first feature film. It doesn't have the technical prowess of something like Pan's Labyrinth or any of his more recent movies, but it has a pretty sweet story about like this grandpa who's a vampire and his relationship with his granddaughter, so I like it a lot. This is a DVD double pack of the original Rodan and War of the Gargantuas, both pretty great kaiju films. Rodan is probably one of my favorite standalone kaiju movies, so I mainly bought the DVD for this. I'm not sure if Rodan has a Blu-ray release, I need to look into that. Right, and this is the original Fright Night, another fun 80s horror movie that doesn't take itself too seriously and has some great practical creature effects as well. This is another one of the OGs, one of my favorite movies ever since I was in diapers. It is Disney's The Lion King. This is the special edition DVD. I think it was the first DVD I ever bought, but I still really need to upgrade to a Blu-ray version. And this is a Full Moon Puppet Master 9-movie pack I bought at a thrift store. Not much to say about it, I haven't watched most of them yet. And this is Let the Right One In, the original Swedish version. Amazing vampire movie, one of my all-time favorites. It's very bittersweet and creepy, and I don't want to give it away, but if you've seen it, you know the pool scene made my jaw drop the first time I saw it. I should really check if this has like a more recent Blu-ray release, because I remember I originally had like an older DVD release of this, but the translation on the subtitles was really bad, and I bought this one because it was improved, so I really need to check if this has a Blu-ray release because I absolutely love this movie. This is the original Pet Sematary on DVD, another one of the better Stephen King adaptations. And this is another secondhand video rental purchase. It's Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Infamously completely unrelated to any of the other Halloween movies. No Michael Myers, no Dr. Loomis, no Laurie Strode. It's a completely original story, which gave it a bad reputation for the longest time, but in more recent years people have reevaluated it, and this is another really great movie to watch on Halloween because while it isn't a flawless film by any means, it's kind of like Trick or Treat. It takes place on Halloween, it just revolves around the entire holiday of Halloween, and it's just very kitschy and a lot of fun. This is my outdated version of Audition on DVD. I have actually upgraded to the Blu-ray version of this, which I already talked about, so I'm just gonna move on. I think I already talked about this Toho pack that has Mothra in it. And this is Repo the Genetic Opera. This was my absolute shit when I was like 13, 14. Still listen to the soundtrack sometimes. It has some bangers on it. And this is The Monster Squad, another fun retro genre movie that doesn't take itself too seriously. And this is Brian De Palma's Carrie. Love this movie. I really need to upgrade to the Blu-ray. And this is Rec or Record, however the hell you say that. One of the best found footage movies ever made. Super intense zombie film. Would definitely recommend it if you haven't seen it. I would really like to get the Blu-ray version of this, but it's weirdly hard to find for some reason, which is really disappointing. This is Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story on DVD. Really underrated and funny parody of musical biopic dramas. The Beatles scene lives rent-free in my brain. I already talked about this. This is Steelbook DVD of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And this is Samurai Cop, another great So Bad It's Good movie. The cover doesn't really convey the tone or the content of the movie at all. I think this also has an upgraded Blu-ray release that I need to look into, but check the hairdo on that dude. And this is Peter Jackson's Dead Alive or Brain Dead. This isn't the fully uncut version, but it is unrated, which was, I think, the best official version available to me at the time, so I'm super happy to have this. One of Peter Jackson's early weird films, Midsummer on DVD, because my mom accidentally bought this for me as a birthday present instead of the Blu-ray, but it was a present, so I'm not going to complain. And this is Martyrs, one of my all-time favorites. I did have an older version of the Blu-ray with absolutely no special features on it, but a local shop had this version in, which has some more special features. It has a hour-long behind-the-scenes documentary, which was basically the reason I bought it, because I did find the documentary on YouTube, but there were no English subtitles, but thankfully this one has subtitles, so there's only 2 left. We're in the endgame, and this is Possum, a recent British horror film, I think. It's super unsettling. I have a fear of mannequins and that kind of thing, so this really fucked my shit up. And this is Lars von Trier's Antichrist Criterion Collection DVD. A really visually interesting film with some interesting themes. It's more unsettling than overtly scary, but I don't think it's inaccurate to call it a horror film. And anyway, that is my entire Blu-ray and DVD collection up until this point. Thank you so much for watching. My battery is still dying. I don't know how much time I have left, so fucking like, subscribe, do all that shit. Okay, bye-bye.